So yes, that was one of my main ambitions was to attend West Point and graduate and be in the Army. I wanted to do that.
Have you been back to Pearl Harbor in 81 years?
My wife and I went back in 1990, something like that, and went to Pearl Harbor and took a tour on to the battleship Arizona, and also to where I used to live at Hickam Field, and saw the house we used to live in, and pointed it out to my wife.
Mr. Herman, thank you very much for joining me, sir. Thank you also for your service. And tomorrow, Pearl Harbor Day, is a day that will live in infamy, and we will honor it by having you on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Rob Schmidt Tonight is up next.
And good evening and welcome to our special coverage of the Georgia Senate runoff. It promises to be an exciting night ahead, Bianca.
Sure.
The polls just now closing at 7 p.m. here on the East Coast. I'm John Bachman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Della Garza. We will be bringing you, of course, the latest results as they come into us here. Also, some key insights and expert analysis. There's a lot to be considered tonight. This is a very big seat here that both sides want.
Yes, the polls, again, as we mentioned, just closing. Of course, we'll be updating the numbers throughout the night. You can tune in here to Newsmax. We'll give you analysis as well. And really, what this all comes down to is the turnout, Bianca. That's been such an important factor here. Democrats claiming an advantage early on. Republicans hoping that the final voters getting out to the polls today will push them over the top.
Yeah, our Leonardo Feldman was out there talking to voters. It was a good day, actually a clear day. So, you know, that obviously makes people go out to the polls. And, of course, we're watching the results as they come in. But we know heading into today's runoff, we knew this was going to be a tight race to watch. And, of course, it is now a battle to the finish. Every vote will count. Early voting, of course, is something to consider. And that began, as you may know, 2 days after Thanksgiving. And the following Monday, it actually saw the largest number of ballots cast on any single day of early voting in the state of Georgia's history. How many, you may wonder? Nearly 2 million Georgians have voted early. So that is a big factor in this. Are they Democrats? Are they Republicans?
That's right. And Herschel Walker has kind of had a running mate down the home stretch here. Governor Brian Kemp, he has really tried to push Herschel Walker along. Also, a lot of Republicans are hoping for that win tonight. Now, Kemp today called on Georgians to get out to the polls.
I voted for Herschel Walker. I want to encourage you to do the same. We got to have a big turnout today to win this thing. Let's get it done and send someone like Herschel to the United States Senate that is going to fight for us.
Now, Herschel Walker's campaign pretty quiet today. That's kind of traditional on a day like today. But yesterday, a different story. He crisscrossed the Atlanta suburbs, stopping at a diner in Flowery Branch, Georgia, about 45 minutes northeast of town of Atlanta. He then continued his Evict Warnock bus tour to Kennesaw over on the northwest side of Atlanta, where he held a rally inside a gun range. And he spoke to an energized crowd of supporters with one simple message: you got to get out and vote.
Get your friends to vote. Call your friends to vote. This is so important. And I say this, if you don't have friends, what do you need to do? Make some friends and get them out to vote.
All right, so how about incumbent Senator Democrat Raphael Warnock? Of course, he's looking to hold on to his seat tonight. Earlier today, he was out canvassing with a group of supporters in Norcross. Last night, he was with a big crowd of about 200 supporters. They were at a local brewery in Atlanta there. Warnock also continued really that same pitch of voter turnout. Take a listen to some of what he said last night.
We saw record voter turnout during the early vote period. But I don't want you to underestimate our opposition. After all,
All right, Democrats, meanwhile, maintain a massive spending advantage in Georgia. Warnock and his allies have outspent Walker by more than 2 to 1. You can see the tallies here on the screen. 51 or $52 million for Democrats, $25 million for Herschel Walker and Republicans.
All right, let's take you live here and show you sort of the election parties. Again, it's very early here, but you can see a lot of flags, a lot of patriotic feeling. This is the Herschel Walker campaign headquarters tonight where folks are gathering. Still too early to tell, of course, as we'll be watching the polls come in and the results come back to us. And on the other side, you see there, that is the Warnock headquarters. Obviously, they're hoping for a big win as well. So we're watching the latest from the ground there. And speaking of that, someone who's been on the ground, our correspondent Leonardo Feldman at the Walker campaign headquarters. So, Leo, welcome in. Tell us a little bit about the mood there. Obviously, we know this has been a very tight race, but again, a lot of folks are hoping Republicans got out today, and that was the factor, all about turnout for Herschel today, Leo, right?
Absolutely, it's all about the turnout. And here at the campaign headquarters at the College Football Hall of Fame of Herschel Walker's watch party, we still haven't seen that many people come in terms of guests, but we have seen his staff arrive. And just moments ago, we saw his bus pull in, and we did see a lot of security coming through the College Hall of Fame, but we still haven't seen Herschel Walker. We are expected to see a lot of supporters coming in the next few minutes because, you know, the polls just closed and a lot of people just went and voted last minute. We did see some tweets from the GOP saying it's not too late to get out to vote just about an hour ago. So a lot of supporters are still making their final casting their ballots. And it is important to point out that this could be a very long night as results are just coming in, and we'll be reporting at the top of every hour, and I'm going to be giving you the very latest and the sense of what the campaign is feeling at the top of every hour. Back to you.
That sounds great. And again, yeah, if people were out and they're in line at the polls, they might still be waiting there to cast their vote for Herschel. All right, Leonardo Feldman on the ground. Keep us posted on what's happening at headquarters. Appreciate it. And let's also take a look, folks, at what to watch out for tonight. So as we know, the Democrats, of course, they do control the Senate, but much is still at stake for Georgia. This is key. If Herschel Walker wins, the Senate, again, won't be this number. It'll be 50-50. Vice President Kamala Harris will be necessary to break any ties. Now, if Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock wins, the Senate then will be 51-49, and Harris will not be necessary to break ties. But there's a lot of other things that play into this. Democratic victory would also limit Senators Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema's voting leverage. They were most likely to oppose their colleagues' agenda. And of course, it also affects judicial nominees, the Senate committee makeup. We will be diving into all of these key factors ahead for you this evening right here.
Well, there are a few hot-button issues that are still driving Georgia voters to the polls, of course, inflation being one of them. High inflation. Georgia's inflation about 10.5% right now, the right to life and border security. And we're also getting our first batch of numbers in. If you look at the screen real quick, you can see just 2% of the votes in, likely coming from a more urban area. Raphael Warnock getting 74% of this first batch of votes. Herschel Walker at 26%. At least, again, just 2% of the votes coming in so far. So we'll keep our eyes on that. We'll also welcome in Rick Grinnell. He joins us now. He's the former acting director of National Intelligence, also served as the U.S. ambassador to Germany under President Trump. As always, great to see you, Rick.
John and Bianca, thanks for having me. Big night tonight.
Big night tonight. This is all about turnout. And, you know, traditionally, Republican voters usually wait to come out later than Democrats. What do you think happens tonight, Rick?
Well, first of all, we got to change that. We got to get people voting early. Of course, we are always concerned about voting security, and so that's why so many Republicans have wanted to vote in person on Election Day. But we're now at the point where, you know, Democrats can really manipulate that moment where you can have tabulators go down, you can have ink problems as we've seen in Arizona. So I'm a big advocate for getting people to vote early, getting your vote in, and I think that's hopefully what's been happening in Georgia. I think we've got a unique set of circumstances this time around. Senator Warnock has been totally with Joe Biden. Hopefully the people of Georgia realize that that is not a direction that we need to go for our country. The more we can make it about Biden, I think the better. We'll see tonight, but as you've been saying, and I think it's really accurate, it's all about turnout. People have to show up. Your vote has to be cast, and in order to do that, you've got to show up or take action. And so the onus is really on people. The candidates have been telling their stories and pitching, but now it's up to the people of Georgia.
Yep, and we were getting some numbers, and it looks like 70% of the vote is in so far. We keep an eye on the tallies. And Rick, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
All the best. Thanks, John.
All right, we want to continue the conversation now. Joining us, Chairman of CPAC, Matt Schlapp, is alongside with us tonight for our coverage. Matt, great to have you in. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you tonight.
Okay, so about voter turnout, and obviously we had a record nearly 2 million votes already cast. This is that early voting. How do you think it looks for Herschel? What are your thoughts on, Republicans getting out today to vote and to get out the vote for Herschel particularly?
Yeah, look, it's very hard because I've been in politics my entire adult life, and we've witnessed the death of polling or the assassination of polling. And if you were to look at polling, you would say that the incumbent, Senator Warnock, is in a good position to win re-election. But, polls have been so off so many times. I think we're all just waiting for these returns to come in. I'll simply say this. I'm glad a lot of Americans want to vote. I'm disappointed that we're so polarized as a country and that we can't find things in common like supporting the military or cops or having a reasonable, lawful border. But this is the time we're in, and people feel motivated to vote, which is a great thing. I think Ambassador Rick Grinnell brings up a great point, which is the Republican Party has been flat on its keister in responding to a lot of these crazy new election laws, and it's time for the national party and for state chairmen to give as well as they have to take. And if that means that we have programs for ballot harvesting and we have programs for early voting, we have to take full advantage of those programs as well. Of course, the difference with the Republicans is we'll do it lawfully, which is the way everyone should do it.
Right, which only bolsters voter integrity, too, that they know that they're going out there. Couple factors in this race that, we can't ignore. Herschel had to confront all these accusations about past relationships, but Warnock had a number of allegations against him as well. His church evicting people, his wife saying he ran over her foot. Not as much attention from mainstream media for Warnock's issues. You know that, Matt. And then on top of it, it comes down to money, and Warnock massively outspent Herschel. Do you think the GOP has done enough? And, I guess to use a football term here, can Herschel feel like he left it all on the field here?
Well, I've talked to Herschel Walker about that. He is leaving it all in the field. But look, you've identified the two biggest problems in politics. The two biggest problems is we no longer have a free media. And I want to give Newsmax a lot of credit for the product you put out there each and every day, because many of us are distraught over the fact that there's not places to turn to just to get the facts. And in Newsmax, you can. But the second major issue you identified is this overwhelming money advantage that the Democrats have. They raise most of this money through Act Blue, which is an online financing arm of their efforts. And I just think Jim Jordan and the rest of these House Republicans who now have gavels in January, I think we ought to be investigating Act Blue. It's a lot of money flowing through politics, and I can understand that the big money's behind the Democratic Party, but 2-to-1 in ads, when you add all the outside money, sometimes it's 3 and 4-to-1. I don't know if the Republican candidates can really defy gravity and win in these situations where they're outspent so overwhelmingly.
Yeah, and especially in the sort of truncated time we had since the midterms. Warnock really did these 60-second commercials where people really can't turn off. And I think they spent like $50 million compared to what Herschel Walker spent in this short, few weeks here, Matt. I mean,
and that's
I guess
just TV.
That's just TV. But
that
in Georgia,
doesn't include all the money they're spending to be organized on the ground, and we're really getting overwhelmed there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it will go down as one of the most expensive Senate races. And, in Georgia, though, you have to wonder if voters are just tired of this, too, and the voter fatigue, hearing ads and ads like for years. It's deja vu all over again, another runoff,
Well, the irony is the runoff system in the South was used to prevent a black man from being able to achieve that magical 50% number. And I guess the good news here today is race won't play a role because a black man is going to be the next senator from Georgia. And maybe these states ought to look at these anachronistic laws like runoffs and look at something else. Look, we've had so many changes in our election system. And we have this ranked choice voting in Alaska, which is a disgraceful situation. We have in California where it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to find out who the winners are. We've got a damn mess in this country on how we elect people, and we ought to learn from what some of our other countries are doing internationally, how they get these quick returns. How about the state of Indiana and Kentucky? You figure out who won by dinner time, and maybe Georgia will show us tonight that they know how to count ballots quickly too.
Let's see. Well, we're watching the results come in. Matt Schlapp of CPAC, we appreciate it. Great to have you with us tonight, and thank you so much for all the insight.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead, of course, live election coverage throughout the night. Stay with Newsmax. We have the latest results, breaking news. You're looking live here at the Warnock headquarters there. And, you know, no one's there yet, John. It's very quiet, but obviously there is still a little ways to go. The polls just closed 15 minutes ago, and with 11% of votes in, you can see Warnock ahead. Not surprising, though, as this is a lot of the early voting that we had seen come in.
Yeah, and according to the data we're getting, the county by county breakdown is kind of coming in as you would expect it would. You know, we got to figure out if anyone's overperforming or underperforming in the counties where they're expected to win or lose. And as you mentioned, Bianca, we're already at 11% of the votes in. We'll see if that pace continues, but we're only 15 minutes into our 3-hour-long broadcast. Do not go anywhere. Of course, we'll take you back to Georgia, and we have new developments from the Twitter files. James Baker, who is the embattled former FBI lawyer, well, he had been working at Twitter. He was fired today. Learn how he also tried to suppress the information from coming out in the Twitter files. We'll bring you an update on that next.
Also ahead for you this evening, the January 6th committee chairman says criminal referrals related to the Capitol riots are under discussion. And now the committee is scrambling to finish its work before the next session of Congress begins in January. We have details. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started tonight with our special election coverage. Vote for America, the Senate runoff in Georgia. Stay with us. Obviously, we're tracking everything happening in Georgia, but another big story we're watching tonight, the Twitter files fallout, you can say. This was a big development. Elon Musk had to fire today Twitter's deputy general counsel. Who was it? It was none other than Jim Baker. This is after revelations about his role in the platform's handling of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Matt Taibbi adding a supplemental Twitter file just a few hours ago explaining this. He said on Friday, the first installment of the Twitter files was published here. We expect to publish more over the weekend. Many wondered why was there a delay. Of course, a lot of people were wondering. Among the reasons, Jim Baker, John, was vetting that first batch of Twitter files without knowledge.
Not that Jim Baker, though. That's
not
Jack.
That's Jack the Baker, which is another story that we're talking tonight. But there was no acknowledgement, I guess, of new management. Elon, you know, he's trying to be transparent. Little did he know that some leftovers were still there with these Twitter drops.
They're
wild.
Hiding under every rock over at Twitter. Let's welcome in former Georgia congressional candidate and conservative news commentator Mikkel Barthelemy. Also, I think we're going to get to Jack Kingston, former congressman from Georgia as well. He's standing by. Jack Kingston, great to have you with us. All right, let's go to Mikkel first. I mean, Mikkel, we're talking about this James Baker guy. He's the former FBI general counsel. He is the same guy who personally signed off on that falsified FISA warrant to spy on President Trump's campaign. He just so happens to be, or was until today, Twitter's deputy counsel. Also, he's the one that urged them to censor the Hunter Biden laptop. And most recently, he was sifting through these Twitter files, deciding what could and could not be released. So you almost can't make this stuff up, Mikkel.
Yeah, I mean, talk about in bed with the enemy. I mean, we have collusion on every single level on the left, how they use social media, big tech, dark money, and all sorts of different mechanisms to silence conservatives. And it makes you really wonder how much impact that they have in the outcome of all of the previous elections until we found out this revelation.
You know, it really was, Mikkel, a revelation for so many people. Yet we had the White House and KJP out. I'm sure you heard her reaction saying, you know, this is old news. This is just unhealthy is what she called it. Obviously, a million people who tuned in to hear Elon Musk, you know, listen in on Saturday night don't feel that way. What's your reaction to the gaslighting still, the cover-up of the cover-up, you could say?
Exactly. When they're caught with their pants down, so to speak, they want to brush it under the rug because, you know, if it was a conservative, think about it, this was a Donald Trump thing. I mean, we would hear nonstop 24/7 media coverage about how the Trump campaign colluded with social media. I mean, the hypocrisy is astronomical at this level.
I guess we're wondering, though, will there be ramifications? What will we see legally? Obviously, if there is these files, will the government be able to prosecute? What happens next? I mean, now that we confirm what everyone thought and everyone believed happened, what do you hope, Michael?
I hope that there is a pathway, and I see that there's a clear pathway to a strong case, a strong litigation against whoever the three-letter agencies and all that colluded. I'm pretty sure that more and more is going to come out. Elon said that he is not finished releasing this, and I'm pretty sure what we're going to see is going to blow our minds. We're going to see things that we didn't even think that was happening. Now, we know that they could be a little bit over the top, or well, shall I say a lot over the top, but I believe that there will be more and more people like James Woods. He said that he was going to come out and sue as well. So there's a lot at stake here on the side of the DNC, three-letter agencies, and everyone on that side.
All right, Kel Bartholomew, great to have you with us. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much. Well, stay with us. Of course, we're just getting started. Polls have just closed about 20 minutes ago in Georgia. We have live election coverage throughout the night. We have the latest, not only in the results as they're starting to come in, but we are at the campaigns monitoring Walker and Warnock's headquarters. If anything develops there, we'll take you there live. 17%, John, of votes and precincts are in. You can see Warnock right now with 61%, Walker with 39%.
Yeah, it looks like these are a lot of the counties surrounding Atlanta, close to Savannah and Macon as well. Somewhat expected to go for Raphael Warnock based on what happened in the general election, but of course we'll keep you updated. 17% of the votes are in. Don't go anywhere. We'll also talk about President Biden. He said he had more important things to do than head to the border when he went to Arizona today. Hear his comments, and we'll talk about what exactly he was up to. Too busy to visit the border. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It is election night in Georgia. That Senate runoff continues as we speak.
The polls have been closed now for 27 minutes. A live look at the numbers right now. The results are coming in, and want to show you sort of where we're at right now. 18% of votes counted. Raphael Warnock holding the lead of 61%. Herschel Walker 39%. But with early voting, we did expect this to be the case here as we watch what counties are sort of reporting. And you mentioned, John, that there's some places where Herschel may have won before, but it looks like Warnock might be pulling ahead a little bit early. But we're watching to see who's pulling ahead and where. Obviously, Metro Atlanta and those counties around there will be key for Herschel Walker, who wants to pull out a win today. Hopefully he got out the turnout. We also have a look at the turnout. 27% of Georgia voted early. Look at these numbers, folks. When it comes to absentee ballots, so far more than 174,000 have been accepted. And when it comes to early voting in person, that's not included today. There's the number right there. The turnout was a little over 1.7 million. So a lot of folks did get out early, and they are thought to be Democratic voters.
All right, let's welcome in now a couple guys who know Georgia pretty well. Former Congressman Doug Collins and fellow former Congressman Jack Kingston. Gentlemen, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you, John.
All right, let's start with you, Congressman Kingston. Give us your read on South Georgia, since that's your part of the state. What do you see right now so far in the early poll numbers coming in?
Well, I want to tell my colleague, Doug Collins, South Georgia is going to do its part. We are going to vote Republican. Unfortunately, as Doug knows, the huge votes are in North Georgia. But I can say this, that in terms of today, I've talked twice to Brad Ratzenberger, our Secretary of State, who's, I think, running a flawless election, by the way. But what he said, we're going to pass maybe 1.4 million votes today. Herschel will get about 50 to 60% of those, and that's a big number for him. 56 to 58% actually. So let me yield to Doug.
Well, this is a great segment, actually, to prove my point. I always tell you, Bianca, you know, I'm from the metro area. My parents are from the Northeast, so I don't have an accent. But you hear the Southern Georgia accent with Congressman Kingston, a little slower, a little bit more deliberate. And then we can go to Congressman Collins now, who comes from North Georgia. It's a little faster. Go ahead, Congressman Collins.
The flavor of the entire state here in this panel.
There's a little bit of something for everybody in Georgia.
we're just like a good crock pot. You just put us in there and simmer us for a while.
There you
We're
go.
all okay. It is, but it's good to see Jack down there. Look, Jack, South Georgia, they do their part. North Georgia is where the wheels are put on the car. And this is where it's going to be very important today for Walker's turnout. Now, let me give you a little bit of numbers. I know the numbers are up about 20% right now. From what we're seeing, some new numbers, updated numbers, we're about 100,000 down. Let me give you some good news for Walker. Hall County, 69%, seemingly early votes come in. He's at 69%. Walker and Jack was very spot on. If he can get the 50 to 60, the closer to 60%, the better he will be at overcoming the early vote margins that Warnock is projected to have coming out of this early vote. So in the counties on early vote that he needs above 60, he seems to be getting those right now. Then it's going to depend on what the day of voting to look like. And again, though, I mean, you just be honest, these counties that did come in early votes for Democrats have been pretty heavy. So it's going to be interesting to see. But for us up here in North Georgia, a lot of rain today, but we were still seeing more voters came out in the evening. It was slower getting on. More voters came out in the evening. That's what Walker has to have. And it's got to be, as we say in Georgia, there's a two Georgias. But for this one tonight, it needs two Georgias for Walker's turnout to come together to defeat the 5 metro areas in Georgia.
I was also talking today, too, you know, they used to talk about the I-4 corridor down in Florida, the interstate that runs from Tampa to Orlando as being a telltale sign on how that state was going to go. Now Florida's all red. In Georgia, I was talking kind of about the Georgia 400 corridor, Congressman, and how that's now important because when you look, you know, Hall County is kind of in that place, you know, Gwinnett County, Jack, Herschel Walker's going to have to outperform what he did in the previous election in that kind of area. That's the part that runs from North Georgia right down through Atlanta, and that's going to be an important part, the suburbs for him.
Well, you know, it used to be Atlanta. We had some competition in there. Cobb was always ours. Gwinnett was always ours. These are big jumbo counties. DeKalb went Democrat, but now it looks like Cobb and Gwinnett are turning more Democrat. However, as Doug said, they're moving to Hall County, they're moving to Cherokee County, they're moving to Forsyth County, and those are fairly populated Republican counties right now. And when I started running for Congress, all of my area was Democrat. It was South Georgia, conservative, rural Democrats, but then they switched. And so we're going to do our part. We're going to have a strong showing, but the big numbers, as Doug said, are up there. But when you think about what was said about, oh, this is Jim Crow #2, voter suppression, blah, blah, blah. If there's anything that shows what a lie that was, it's this election and this runoff. And I do hats off to Brad Ratzenberger, Governor Kemp, and all the people who are part of that. Doug Collins was. And Georgia's having a very dynamic political season. And, you know, who would have said, you know, you don't see 2 African-American candidates going head-to-head in Delaware or in Massachusetts or Vermont. You know, where are those holier-than-thou Yankees at on this point?
It's an excellent point. And, you know, Governor Kemp had that big rally for Walker, and that was in Cobb County. It was in Smyrna. He's been, you know, obviously very big on the campaign trail where, you know, they hadn't been seen together before the midterms, but now Kemp has really come out and, you know, in these last few days here, which is so critical. If tonight Herschel can pull it off, Doug, what do you think this means for Governor Kemp and his future and where he takes sort of his role in all of this?
Well, I think it just shows that Governor Kemp is a re-elected popular governor in Georgia. I mean, he did something that a lot, even a year and a half ago, Jack and I probably talking was saying, how was this going to play out? He played it out perfectly. He did what he had to do. And yeah, when you saw him and Herschel at Smyrna together in that first rally, that was it was a big deal because they had not campaigned before. But let me go to something that Jack touched upon, and Jack was a pioneer. Do not let Jack Kingston fool you. He was one of the reasons Georgia is in a position it is right now to actually be a Republican state. And I think that is overlooked. There's so many there that was that. He was part of that in the 90s when we started that turn. Remember, Georgia has only been a statewide Republican state since 2002, really 2005 if you take it that far. But let me just say this, for all these reporters out there from north of or outside of Georgia and inside of Georgia, including the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, everybody else, this state has not flipped. Certain races have flipped because of certain candidates and certain Republicans staying at home. But if you look at the ballot up and down this list, except for this race right here with Warnock, Republicans dominated in some of the biggest percentage wins we've seen in about 8 years. That tells me that this is a center-right state Democrats are better motivated and better at the small game, but again, the results showed it that Georgia is still that center-right state. I'm sick of the narrative from the Beltway in Washington, D.C. saying, oh, it's a purple state. No, I guess if you have a funny definition of purple, it's called red.
Yeah, I grew up with guys like Sam Nunn, who was a Democrat, but did more for Georgia in terms of bringing in military spending, a very conservative Democrat. But it was guys like Jack Newt and Bob Barr and Johnny Isaacson, may he rest in peace. It really, you know, that's the politics I grew up on.
I don't know. Doug stepped up as a young man. He played basketball at Governor Deal's house with his children. So he's been a superstar. And, you know, I want to say this about Brian Kemp. I think he's going to be a great president, and I hope he thinks about Ron DeSantis as his vice president.
Oh.
It might be a good combination.
Well, I tell you what, on both those guys, they're reaping the rewards of their COVID policies right now. They were very effective in how they managed that,
yes.
and the people are repaying them for that with their reelections. I don't know about presidential races. Of course, we were talking about the list growing longer and longer. But gentlemen, great to see you. That was a fun conversation. We'll talk to you soon.
Y'all take care.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, still ahead, we're going to check back in. Our senior correspondent, John Huddy, tracking some of the numbers as they come here in the Georgia Senate runoff election. Again, very exciting here. Big race tonight, and we're watching it all unfold.
Yeah, just take a look here at your screen. 28% of the votes already in, and you can see how much the lead has shrunk so far. Raphael Warnock with 58% of the vote. Herschel Walker with 42% of the vote. But again, a lot of the vote coming in so far are from these metro counties, the counties surrounding Atlanta and Macon and Augusta and Savannah. Those have traditionally favored Raphael Warnock. They did the last time around. But Herschel Walker doing very well. You got some good news from Doug Collins there. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on this. Many more stories to come about Georgia. Also, we're keeping an eye on the Twitter files and the latest developments there. We may see a second drop soon. We're also learning more about that former FBI lawyer, James Baker, who was working at Twitter until today. Elon Musk fired him. Stay with us. Wow. We'll have more on that coming up as well. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us for our special coverage of this Georgia Senate runoff. Polls closed a short time ago, and we are getting more information and data on how the counties are voting for this critically important Senate seat. Monitoring all of this for us, senior correspondent John Huddy. Hey, John.
Yeah, hey, John. Yeah, so we're watching this closely, and the numbers are still coming in. Close to about half of basically the precincts, the 159 Georgia precincts have voted or are reporting their numbers. And right now we're seeing that Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democratic senator, is ahead 62% to Herschel Walker, who's at right now 38%. But again, it is very early. So this is likely to change as the minutes and hours go on. Some of the areas we're watching are very closely the Atlanta metro area, and the results coming out of the counties there. We're talking about Fulton, Gwinnett, Cobb, and DeKalb, which are the biggest counties, respectively, by population and tend to vote Democratic. So we want to see if the early voting matches the turnout today as far as are people voting blue there, or is Herschel Walker picking up votes. We're also watching closely some of the rural counties where Herschel Walker has been really trying to galvanize Republican support. You've heard that word galvanize a lot, but he's been hitting these areas very hard throughout the campaign, targeting those Republicans who voted for Brian Kemp back in November, but did not cast a ballot for Herschel Walker. In fact, Kemp got 200,000 more votes than Herschel Walker on November 8th. It's something that I talked about with Herschel Walker after one of his rallies last week in Greensboro, Georgia. He kind of took issue with my framing of a question asking, what if there are voters who are reluctant to vote for him, once again, because some of the allegations and accusations that have really dogged his campaign. And Walker told me they're not dealing in what ifs, and that they're going into this election tonight with a winning mentality, not looking at the hypotheticals. And we had kind of a spirited debate, if you will, on that. That said, we are looking at the early voting numbers for some clues as to how tonight may go. 1.8 million people cast a ballot in Georgia's early voting. Some of the rural counties, by the way, where Herschel Walker really needed Republicans to turn out en masse and force, saw some pretty solid turnout numbers, and it looks like we're seeing that again, places like Greene, Towns, Raven, and Cherokee counties, among others. However, However, the early voting data also shows that a majority of voters were female, 56%, who sided with Reverend Warnock last month, and a third are black voters who exit polls showed favored Senator Warnock as well. And in contrast to early voting, lines were not long today at the polls statewide in Georgia, and the forecast was for rain, particularly in the northern part of the state and the rural parts of Georgia, where, again, Herschel Walker really needs a solid turnout among Republican voters, John.
Yes, he does. John Huddy will check in with you periodically. Thanks so much. We'll see you a little bit later.
All right, so obviously a lot at stake. I mean, we think of 50-50, but this could obviously change things depending if Herschel can pull this out tonight. And we want to bring in former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum for some analysis into what we're seeing here as we're watching results come in. Senator Santorum, great to see you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
So obviously voter turnout was key here for Herschel to get through this. You've talked a little bit in the past about, Republicans and the candidate quality. He was battered with a lot of media reports. Warnock's campaign had, 3 times the amount of money going into, spending and to assault him with a lot of things here. What's your take on what we're seeing now, and how do you feel Herschel may have done galvanizing his voters to get out to vote for him today, Senator Santorum?
Yeah, I think at least what I've been hearing is happening in Georgia is the race has turned into more of a shirts versus skins race. In other words, one side versus the other, Republican versus Democrat, and who's going to control the Senate, who's going to be a block on the Biden agenda. And in a state which I believe is, I agree with Doug, that the state which is still a lean red state, that's exactly the kind of race you want boiling down, which is Republicans need to get out to vote in order to stop the Democrats from controlling the United States Senate. And I think that's actually, I think we've seen that. According to the reports I've been reading, Democrats are about 200,000, 210,000 in the modeling ahead on the early vote. And Republicans and, the election day turnout had to be about 1.4 million, and Herschel had to get about 57, 58% of that vote. And that's pretty much what seems to be happening right now. So I would say this is going to be a nail biter of a race, but I think they go in the closing week or so, they got the right message out, and Herschel has made a strong push at the end. And I think there's a chance that he could actually pull this off, contrary to what the media has been saying.
Yeah, and you also saw so many of the current sitting GOP senators come to Georgia and rally on Herschel's behalf. You saw Brian Kemp do that as well. You obviously did not see Donald Trump do that. Win, lose, or draw, well, of course, nobody ties in these types of races anymore, but Senator Santorum, when you look at the outcome of this race tonight, if Herschel Walker does win, what does it mean for those senators and Brian Kemp? And if he does lose, what does it mean for them as well? And what does it mean for Donald Trump?
Well, if you win, certainly Brian Kemp will be taking a victory lap here. He's the change agent. There were, as you said earlier, tens of thousands of voters who voted for Brian Kemp and Raphael Warnock, and Kemp really worked hard to get those voters out. Even though he knew it was going to hurt Herschel Walker, he knew it was going to help him. Now, he didn't do that. Obviously, he didn't do that in this election. He didn't drive out those Kemp-Warnock votes. So Kemp really did a great job in rallying his machine to support Herschel. Got out there on the campaign trail with him. Did some fundraising for him. This is going to be a big win for Kemp. It'll be a big win for the Republican senators and everybody who came down there. And it will be a win for Trump in the sense that Herschel didn't lose. It'll be his probably of all the candidates that he sort of handpicked, who were very, very close to him, he will be the only one that will have won in a tough state. And so that's a big win for Trump too. So Herschel's win is a win across the board, more for maybe Kemp than anybody, but it's still a win for all the Republicans who supported it.
Yeah, and especially for voter turnout today, pulls it out. It's terrific to know that voters were engaged, active in the process, and went ahead and cast their votes. We know you say it's going to be a nail biter. We're here for the long run. Senator Santorum, we know you're sticking around. We're going to see you a bit later on during the broadcast. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, outside of Georgia, one of the stories we're covering tonight as well is the January 6th committee. The leader of that committee says there will most likely be criminal referrals made in connection to the breach of the Capitol on that day. When will we hear the charges, and who could be in legal trouble? Will they actually be in legal trouble? What does this mean? We'll break that down coming up.
And welcome back now. So January 6th Committee Chairman Benny Thompson is now saying that criminal referrals related to the Capitol riots are under discussion. Here's what he said, folks. He said, quote, "What we've decided is that we will probably make referrals. It's under consideration, but we've not decided to do it," end quote. Now, we do know the committee is scrambling to finish its work before the next session of Congress begins in January, and Republicans take the House majority.
Joining us now for more on this is former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Great to see you, Matthew.
Hey, good evening. Good to be with you both.
It sounds like, I mean, criminal referrals sounds scary, but give us an idea, a sense of what it means for Benny Thompson to be throwing this out. It seems like he's equivocating a little bit, too, in his announcement.
Yeah, I think this is probably tries to make it sound like a bigger deal than it is. You know, the Department of Justice receives criminal referrals, you know, on a regular basis from Congress and from members of the Congress and the Senate. And, you know, I remember back during the Kavanaugh hearings, Senator Grassley sent over several referrals to some of those witnesses that clearly lied under oath. And, you know, he wanted the Department of Justice to look into prosecuting them. And this had the same effect. It's just we believe that, you know, a crime has been committed, and would you please look at this? It doesn't mean the Department of Justice is going to pursue charges, and really, at the end of the day, it just shows a little bit how toothless the Congress is, and being able to enforce, you know, their own kind of procedures and processes.
Yeah, we know they think a crime has been committed. We get it.
Yeah.
They've said as much too. This just does seem like, you know, kind of a new wrapper on these same allegations.
Remember, John, I mean, it's so important when you have criminal laws, you have to have all the facts and apply those to the elements of a crime. And I have not seen where that deliberate analysis has been done by Congress. I mean, they're just saying, oh, we have a bunch of stuff, and so, you know, please prosecute. I mean, I remember there's already been criminal charges, and a lot of these people that we're seeing here on the screen that, you know, that rioted at the Capitol and went in without permission. So I'm not sure who else they believe should be prosecuted.
Yeah, another layer to this, of course, we can't forget they brought in a big producer for their, you know, show trial there, and the GOP has put them on notice to say, we want you to hold everything because we will be reviewing what you did as well. So if they were trying to, you know, use their investigation and, you know, selectively delete certain testimony that they didn't like to frame a narrative, they may not get away with that as well when the
Real
House
quick,
GOP
Matthew,
takes over.
we also want to ask you about this conviction in New York City today, the New York DA getting a conviction. The Trump Organization is the one that was convicted here, not Donald Trump himself. The former president commented on the conviction, quote, "Murder and violent crime is at an all-time high in New York City, and the DA's office has spent almost all of its time and money fighting a political witch hunt for D.C. against Trump over fringe benefits, something that our history of our country has never been so tried in court before." What do you make of this situation in New York?
Yeah, I just think you have obviously very aggressive prosecutors that want to do anything they can to, you know, dirty up and go after Donald Trump. And, you know, he has had to fight through all of this. I mean, I think this case, you know, just is you know, people took some aggressive tax positions that they couldn't support ultimately. And that's what happens in these cases. I mean, you know, remember Donald Trump, there was no evidence that I heard in this trial anyway that, you know, he was the decider on this issue, that this was, you know, some of his employees that were taking advantage of, you know, kind of things that shouldn't have been tax deductible. I don't think it's you know, it's a serious, but not like, you know, that serious. It's one of those things that obviously New York had every right to try to pursue this case, but I'm not sure that ultimately Donald Trump would get a fair trial, or the Trump Organization getting a fair trial in New York City in front of a New York jury.
Yeah, and you wonder how the people of New York feel about this when you got, you know, surveillance video. I think the newest one is some guy just walking down the street beating somebody up with a bat, like the president indicated there. You don't feel safe on the subway, but the Trump Organization, yes, their tax strategy has been exposed. Thank you to Alvin Bragg. Great to see you, Matthew Whitaker. We appreciate it.
Good to see you. We'll do this again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, and stay with us. Of course, we're watching all the numbers come in. Our special coverage of the Georgia Senate runoff election is here right now. 41% of the votes in. Warnock stands at 56%, but Walker's still there. He's in this, John, 44%. It's going to be an interesting evening here as it's about voter turnout today. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back to our live coverage of the Georgia Senate runoff election. It is 8 p.m. in Georgia and here on the East Coast of the United States, and the polls have been closed for about an hour. I think we have some results to show you. They are streaming in. I'm John Bachman. Great to have you with us. Thanks for staying with us.
Yeah, I'm Bianca De La Garza. This is an exciting night as we watch the votes come in. Of course, this is a battle for a Senate seat that really will determine so much here. Will the Senate be 50-50 or will there be 51-49? A lot on
miserable policies that Biden has put out there in the last 2 years, and that Raphael Warnock has voted 96% of that. So that's our momentum right now. And that's what we're praying and hoping for, that people see their checkbooks, they see the rising prices of food, they see the gas prices. I mean, diesel, my God, is like $5 a gallon, man. I mean, really. And so this is some of the things, and by the way, I don't wish that to be that, first of all, because it affects all of us, especially folks who are really having a tough time from every paycheck to paycheck. But this is why Herschel Walker will prevail. He will bring a balance, it will be 50-50, and so that'll be a lot better than what it is right now. So our other chances of the next Senate run, we can get a majority, and then we'll have the House and the Senate. So it's a great night.
Perfect. Yeah, and we're seeing some of the numbers come in, and so far they're not looking so good. But, we've seen that in other races, and towards the end, everything changes. Do you have hope that Herschel Walker is going to pull the victory?
Well, yeah, I do. I know him well, and he worked hard. He's been campaigning for like a year and a half almost, and and he has a name. It's like he's in one of these statues up here actually. So, but anyway, like I said, it's been a long run. We've been campaigning for over a year, but once again, I really believe that the failed policies and these radical types of voting that Raphael put into the Senate is a telltale sign, and the Georgians are looking at their checkbooks as well as the country. So we're hoping and praying that we're going to be able to get over the finish line. I'm in prayer, and I hope y'all are in prayer, because we really want this really bad, and it's just phenomenal. It's just a great vibe here also.
And can you tell us what it means for Herschel Walker to hold his watch party here at the College Football Hall of Fame, especially, what he's done for Georgia in terms of football?
Well, he's, Heisman Trophy, NFL star, USFL star, and he's a Georgia. He's from Watkinsville, Georgia here. And, here we are, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of, bringing a national name for here from Georgia, and to let alone, have a great business background and going out there and serving and bringing that wealth of knowledge and that fight. People don't realize this man is a fighter. I mean, MMA fighter, I forgot about that. I remember running into him in Switzerland, believe it or not. I was on my honeymoon in 1992, and the Winter Olympics were in Albertville, France. True story. So remember he was pushing the bobsled. So ladies and gentlemen, I forgot about the bobsled. So we can go down the list of all the things he's done. And I say this to say that his willingness to succeed and to fight. And ladies and gentlemen, if he, God blesses, we get to that Senate, this is the type of fighter that you'll get in that Senate seat. And that's what we're hoping and praying for.
So there you heard it. Bruce Lavelle, one of the big-time advisors to former President Donald Trump. He still has hope that Herschel Walker will pull a victory here in Atlanta. Back to you.
All right, Leo, Bruce, thanks so much. Keep us posted from election headquarters there. Obviously, incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock does hold the lead right now, and he's looking to hold on to his seat. He was canvassing earlier today with his supporters in Norcross, and this was his situation last night here. He entertained about 200 supporters. There was live music and dancing at a local Atlanta brewery. Warnock continued, of course, the same pitch today. He said it was all about voter turnout.
We saw record voter turnout during the early vote period. But I don't want you to underestimate our opposition. After
All right, so he was saying, you know, don't count on the early votes, get out and vote, just like Herschel's camp was as well. Now, Democrats, meantime, did maintain some massive ad spending in Georgia for this runoff. Warnock and his allies outspent Walker more than 2-to-1. Look at the numbers there. Warnock spending $52 million. The Republican spending, this is November 9th to December 5th, $25 million.
Also, we mentioned at the top of the program that the rural counties will be a key factor tonight, especially for Herschel Walker. The larger metropolitan areas like Atlanta and Columbus and Savannah, they will be seeing the results quicker. That's what we believe is coming in so far. These tend to favor Raphael Warnock, at least they did during the general election in November. Of course, we're monitoring these counties. They will give us an indication on where things will end up later tonight. And tonight is a big night, of course. A lot is at stake. Let's look out for a bit to watch out for. Of course, we know Democrats do control the Senate, but there is a lot at stake for this race in Georgia because if Herschel Walker wins, the Senate again will be 50-50. Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie. If Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock wins, the Senate will be 51-49. Harris will not be necessary to break ties. And also the Democrat victory would limit Senators Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema's voting leverage, who were most likely to oppose their colleagues' agenda. We'll be diving into all of these issues at stake a little later. Of course, this time around, it's a one-on-one race between Walker and Warnock here. The majority of voters in the November midterms were voting for that balance of power. We saw a lot of people come out, also for Governor Kemp as well. But the hot button issues still driving voters to the polls today. You just heard Bruce Lavelle talk about inflation affecting people, the right to life, abortion came into play, and also border security. And joining us now with some analysis and insight on what is happening is Georgia Congressman Barry Loudermilk. Congressman, great to have you in with us this evening. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bianca, it's good to be with you, and thank you for the excellent coverage of a very important night tonight.
Thank you.
Critically important. Congressman, give us an update. It looks like Cherokee County is coming in strong for Herschel Walker. Are you hearing about any areas of concern or any areas of good news with the early vote total so far?
I predict in the next few minutes you're going to see that gap close. We know this is early votes that are coming in. We also know that Democrats tend to vote early in Georgia. Republicans tend to vote on Election Day. So the key has been how many Republicans are going to get out. Is it going to be enough to close that gap and go ahead? I think you're going to see, I'd say in the next half hour, you're going to see that gap begin to close with Herschel and Warnock, and it's going to become a much more competitive race. Look, I've been traveling with Herschel. We made several stops on the bus tour together, and every place I've been has been tremendous turnout, both in the general election and in the runoff. There is a lot of energy in that campaign, and there's a lot of momentum. And just like in football, the guy who has the momentum is the one who generally carries it across the finish line. This is going to be tight. I think we're not going to know for a while. We may not even know for sure until the end of the week because of the judge's ruling that ballots in one county can come in as late as Friday, and as well as the overseas military ballots. But we should get a good feel this evening of where we are.
Well, Raphael Warnock's got a lot of support from people outside of the state of Georgia, including President Biden when he was in Massachusetts. But President Obama came into the state of Georgia, and here was his final pitch for voters.
Since the last time I was here, Mr. Walker has been talking about issues that are of great importance to the people of Georgia, like whether it's better to be a vampire or a werewolf.
You know, that almost sounds like President Obama when he was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner saying that Donald Trump would never be president, and he was arguing about which was more important over
famous clip, yes.
Gary Busey or whatever. He's good at the podium. You got to give Barack Obama that, but I don't know. Does that resonate with Georgia voters?
Not really. I mean, Georgia voters, as Bruce said earlier, they're feeling it in the pocketbook. They're looking for answers. They're looking for solutions. Look, Barack Obama comes into Georgia, and he can't say anything good about the current president. He can't talk about policies. He can't talk about the prices. He can't talk about national security or border security. All these things are failures. So all he can do is attack Herschel Walker. So we understand that. Herschel has come across as the outsider, someone who is, not part of the Washington establishment. And as we've seen over the past several years, that is the message it sells. People are sick and tired of Washington as the way it has been, and they're looking for something new. So did his message resonate with enough people? Runoffs are all about turnout. And as you can see, we were outspent double, but yet when the Democrats doubled the spending in the campaign and it's still this close, it can tell you that, their message is not really getting across. The message that is getting across is we're paying more for less and we're waiting longer to get it.
Well, there's still several hours as we watch the results come in. Congressman Loudermilk, it was great to have you in. We appreciate your analysis, your insight, and thank you so much for being with us on this big election evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Congressman, one last look at the numbers for you before we head to a quick commercial break. Here you can see Raphael Warnock with a lead over Herschel Walker, but not even 50% of the votes are in and counted yet. You just heard from Congressman Barry Loudermilk. We can expect that gap to close, according to him, in the next 30 minutes or so. Stay with us. We will update you on any changes. Of course, we'll have more on other breaking news stories today as well. Don't go anywhere. All right, tonight is the final contest of the 2022 midterm elections. We're tracking this race between Democratic incumbent Raphael Warnock versus Republican nominee Herschel Walker in the Georgia Senate runoff. Polls just closed at 7 o'clock, and the results are trickling in. Monitoring all of it is senior correspondent John Huddy. He joins us now live. What do you got for us, John?
Well, John, your guest right before the break said that he expected in the next 30 minutes things would really tighten up between Herschel Walker and the incumbent Democrat, Senator Raphael Warnock. Well, he was spot on. It is getting the race is getting much tighter at this point, according to our latest numbers coming in, with an estimated 49% of the votes counted. That's 1.7 million, a little over 1.7 million. Both candidates are getting a lot. Like I said. That lead that Raphael Warnock had 40 minutes ago has definitely shrunk. And as I mentioned earlier, we're watching some of the kind of key county areas, the key precincts of the 159 Georgia precincts, specifically the Atlanta metro areas, the counties of Fulton, Gwinnett, Cobb, and DeKalb, which are the biggest counties, respectively, by population and tend to vote Democratic. Some of these areas, for instance, I'm just going through the map. Fulton, right now, Raphael Warnock is up by 82% over Herschel Walker, 17%. If Warnock continues to keep those numbers in these major population areas, it's going to be trouble for Herschel Walker, who's been really trying to get out that Republican vote in some of the more rural parts of Georgia, particularly in the north, where he really trailed Brian Kemp back in November. As you may recall, in fact, Kemp got 200,000 more votes than Walker on November 8th, and it's something that was brought up in my conversation with Herschel Walker on the campaign trail last week after one of his bus tours. I talked about that. Look, what if people are once again reluctant to cast a ballot for you? You've really taken hits. It's been a very contentious, it's been a very nasty campaign. And as I said, John, Herschel Walker said, we're not dealing with what ifs. We're not dealing with hypotheticals. As a champion, you go into a fight, you go into a match, you go into a game looking to win. You don't look at the hypotheticals. And he was really adamant about that. That said, we're also keeping an eye on those early voting numbers and how those may play a part and give clues as to how tonight may go once all the ballots are counted, as they continue to be counted. 1.8 million ballots were cast for early voting, and the rural counties where Herschel Walker really needs Republicans to turn out saw some pretty solid numbers, places like Greene, Towns, and Rabun, and we're starting to see that a little bit again, particularly Cherokee County, actually. As I'm looking at the latest numbers, Herschel Walker is up 62% over Raphael Warnock, 37%. So really, Walker needs to continue that momentum in these Republican areas. He needs to get out and not only match the numbers back in November, but even top those numbers. Now, in contrast, though, to early voting lines, we're not as long today at the polls statewide in Georgia. And, as I said, the forecast was for rain. So that sometimes acts as a deterrent on Election Day, and particularly in the northern part of the state where Herschel Walker really needs that solid turnout. So those are the areas we're keeping a very close eye in as the race is getting tighter, John.
Yeah, John, you mentioned Cherokee County, and Herschel Walker is winning there. He's also losing in Cobb County, which is the county just immediately south of Cherokee County. He's got to win Cherokee County by a lot more than he loses Georgia by because of the population challenges there.
Right.
So we're drilling down on that type of data, and John, we'll check back in with you as more of that data comes in tonight. Great to see you as always.
Thanks, John.
For more analysis right now, let's welcome in political and communication strategist Paris Denard and also editor-in-chief of the National Memo, Joe Conason. Gentlemen, great to have you in. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good to be with you.
All right, so this is exciting right now. We're at 50% of the votes being tabulated here, and we do see 52% for Raphael Warnock, Herschel Walker at 47%. So we're still in this. Paris, what's your sense on how well Herschel did to motivate his base to get out today?
Well, I think Herschel left everything on the field, to use a football analogy. I think he did the best that he could with the limited time that he had from the general election to today's runoff. He had so much support from a lot of local elected officials and a lot of national elected officials, especially those in the United States Senate, which is important for the party's base to see United States senators saying that, yes, Herschel is our guy. We need him here in the United States Senate, and we don't want Raphael Warnock. And so it remains to be seen if those efforts are going to prove to be positive for the Walker campaign, so much so that they are able to, as John said, get more, do better than they did in the general election. Because look, there was 200,000 votes that Herschel lost by. He needs to get those votes. And will he get those votes from those rural counties? Was he able to motivate those people to come out and vote today? That is the hope. And I think he did all that he could to do it with his bus tour, with his Evict Warnock tour, going across the state, crisscrossing the counties. It's going to be tough. It's going to be close. But hopefully Herschel was able to convince more Republicans and those independents to come out and vote for him, especially the ones that did not vote for him in the general election. And the last point is this. This is a true test for Governor Kemp. Was he able to take the energy and the votes and the momentum that he had in the general and transfer it over to Herschel in this runoff election?
Yeah, that's going to be a key test, because also we haven't heard much from Stacey Abrams. She was kind of a non-factor, wasn't able to help out Raphael Warnock at all. But Joe, one thing I think we have to kind of all agree on is that this whole myth about Jim Crow 2.0 and voter suppression being a thing in Georgia isn't really a thing, because everyone's talking, Democrats and Republicans, about record turnout for this runoff election. So whatever happened to that talk about Jim Crow 2.0 and these oppressive Georgia voting laws? They said they weren't going to allow people to have water in line. Of course, that was a myth. Joe, what's the deal here?
The deal is that there were long lines for early voting, and some people didn't vote because of them, John. And I think if you look at the coverage, you'll see that's true. On the other hand, one of the things that was said about the oppressive voting laws, or at least the attempts to discourage people from voting, that some people perceived, was that the reaction would be people would want to vote more. And maybe that's what we're seeing here. I don't know, but certainly that was one prediction that some people made, which is the more you try to suppress, the more people will actually push back and want to come out to vote. And maybe that's what happened.
Well, a counterintuitive way of applying logic, but I appreciate that type of thinking, Joe, sometimes. No, I'm just
telling you what some people said, John.
But Joe, look, my parents live in Georgia. They waited in line to vote. A lot of people did, and it's all controlled by local, precincts.
Right.
So,
listen, I think it'd be great if votes were not suppressed. I think we should all agree on that.
Yeah, I think we do.
Nobody's vote ought to be suppressed, and
I think we do.
Nobody's
vote should be suppressed, and apparently no one's vote was suppressed because record numbers.
1.7 million.
Yeah.
Early voting.
All right, and 1.8 million counted so far. 52% of the vote is in.
The other interesting thing here is
real quick, Joe, because we got about 10 seconds.
Yeah, so with 50% in, we're seeing that the polls seem to be have been accurate. The last few polls showed about a 4% margin for Senator Warnock, and that is what we're seeing right now. So we'll see if that holds.
If it holds, that's correct. If it holds, we'll keep watching. Great to see you both. Paris Denard and Joe Conason. Again, here's the current vote tally. 52% of the votes are in. Raphael Warnock with about 950,000 votes counted so far. Herschel Walker with about 870,000 voted. 52 to 48%. Keep watching. Stay with us. We'll keep you updated on this throughout the night.
Also ahead for you, the left continuing their attacks on the First Amendment. Trump attorney Alina Habba joins us after the break. She's standing by right now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here. right, of course, we're watching the big Georgia runoff numbers come in. Meantime, tonight we're also watching a big story that's developing over the Twitter files. An update, if you didn't know this, folks, this came in a few hours ago. Matt Taibbi talking about a supplemental here. He explains why there was that delay in the second round. It was expected yesterday. Well, here's the skinny. Taibbi is saying that Jim Baker was fired today, but apparently he had been vetting the first batch of Twitter files without anyone of the new management, Elon's crew, knowing. The new round of Twitter files, again, will appear from Barry Weiss, another attorney Elon approved. We're monitoring this, as always, because you just seem to not be able to make any of this stuff up, because this was a huge story that developed over the weekend, John, as you know, and apparently Baker had his hands in it as well without Elon knowing, or any of us.
And he also had his hands in the FBI's Russian hoax for so long. This guy's had quite a career. Let's welcome in now Alina Habba. She is an attorney for President Trump. Great to see you, Alina.
Hi, Alina.
Good to see you. Hey, guys. How are you?
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of gobsmacked by Jim Baker and his CV. He was basically, let go from the FBI because of leaks. He was leaking to the press. Then he went and worked at Twitter, of course, where he helped suppress the Hunter Biden story. You can't make this stuff up, can you?
No, you can't. And let me add some color to that story. James Baker, who I had the pleasure of watching take the stand in the Durham trial regarding all the Russia hoax, which we well know, was also the individual that set up the Sussman meeting, set up the FBI meeting. He was internal and failed to take record of the hard drive that he received, which we now know was funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign. If you look at this situation, this guy then gets set up by Perkins Coie, goes to Twitter and helps the left-wing media censor what we know and what we hear. And that is the problem with our country right now. If you watch one station, you hear one thing. If you watch another, you hear another. And then if you are on a media station that is being censored because they're pushing a political opponent that they want, they'll do what they want. It's been corrupt for so long that I cannot even imagine that this guy is sitting on Twitter helping the left-wing media censor. And by the way, the DNC also got to flag what emails weren't put out about Hunter Biden's laptop story. That's what we're living in right now, folks.
Yeah, and then you have KGP at the White House podium saying this is old news, this is unhealthy, nothing's going to come of it. It's just wild. But since you're an attorney, it seems like this is a clear violation of Section 230, the Communications and Decency Act, Alina. If you've got Vijaya Gadde, Yoel Roth, the Twitter executives who were involved in this per their own internal communication, it's kind of black and white.
And specifically, where they claim there was a hack with the Hunter Biden laptop, when there wasn't a hack, you would need some sort of police report to justify that. But these people, Yoel Roth and Vijaya Gadde, they were making these decisions without any proper basis to do so. And Section 230 says they get protection from what's posted on their platform as long as they're not moderating the content. And this is some of the clearest evidence that we have so far that they were doing that.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And if it wasn't for people like my clients that fight for the country and take the risk and are able to fund it, frankly, because they can, we would be in deep trouble. And I hope that lawsuits come out of this. I can tell you that I'm incredibly proud of what Elon Musk did, removing him immediately when it came out. But it's not about what happened. It's about looking forward to the future. We cannot go through another election. We cannot go through any more politics getting involved with American people being able to hear what is and isn't factual. And that is what's happening. The DNC has no business getting involved in Twitter. FBI executives that were removed should not be going to Twitter. And I really cannot say anything other than I really hope it opens up everybody's eyes at this point. Yeah, unfortunately, no matter what sections and protections we have, and you're obviously well versed in them, the court systems are corrupt right now. And until we clean that up, no one's going to have their fair day in court.
Yeah, this was happening at the national level, which we saw in this case here, but also at the state level. Rogan O'Hanley, D.C. Drano, he has a case before the Ninth Circuit Court in California right now. The state of California contacted Twitter and told them to deplatform D.C. Drano because of some of the stuff that he was saying about vaccine and mask mandates in that state.
So actor James Woods.
It is so deep, and as Alina was saying, until we get the right judges, the right these cases before the right courts, this is going to continelcontinue.
Yeah, but
it's not a Twitter at other places.
Word of public opinion, though, people are watching, they're taking notice, and they are demanding answers. I guess, fortunately, Elon's in the position to open up the books here.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Alina Hava, great to see you, as always. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Alina.
Thank you.
All right, again, we're watching the votes as they come in tonight.
Look at this, Bianca, just 2 points separating these two right now. So that's the lead has been cut in half since the last time we got a real-time tally of the votes. And as Congressman Barry Loudermilk predicted, and so did Doug Collins,
He did.
you know, right around 8:30 is when things are going to start to tighten up. So we see that right now. 55% of the votes are in. Raphael Warnock with just a slim 2-point lead. Don't tell Joe Conason that the polls might not be accurate. We'll get a live update from Leonardo Feldman. He is live at Herschel Walker's headquarters. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Senate runoff election in Georgia tonight. And Raphael Warnock, the incumbent, and Herschel Walker, the Trump-endorsed Republican, now just stand only a point away. Very exciting. Let's get you out to the ground. Our Leonardo Feldman is at Herschel Walker's campaign headquarters. Leo, take it away.
Well, Bianca, what I can tell you is that as the polls, I mean, the results are coming in and they're changing. And just a few seconds ago, the results show that Walker is ahead of Warnock. I mean, that could change at any moment, but the crowd went crazy here. And I'm here with Vernon Jones. He is a former Georgia State representative. And again, they keep going up, and now he has the lead, Walker. And you guys are seeing that live. People are jumping. People are super excited. Tell us, Vernon, what does this mean? I mean, is he going to win tonight?
What it means is that we have a race here. Herschel's competitive. You give him the ball, he will run with the ball. There's still 45% of the vote out there, so we're still waiting to see what happens. But remember, just a few minutes ago, he was down, what was 60-40. Here he is now. He's surpassed Warnock. But we still have numbers coming in. I want to see where DeKalb is, Fulton, Gwinnett County, Cobb, those heavily Democratic counties. But if we're almost through those counties, oh my God, it's going to be amazing what's going to happen. But just sit back, stay tuned. This is a real race, folks. This is a real campaign. They both put it all on the field. And I can tell you this, Herschel already has a lot to be proud of. This can change the whole landscape in Washington. This can change the whole landscape in this country. Herschel's still picking up more speed. You know, the more yardage he gets, the faster he gets. And so you see what's happening right now on that political field. But again, let's see what's going to happen.
And can you tell us a little bit about why this campaign has resonated so much with Georgia voters?
Well, Georgia voters see what happened in 2020 with the presidential election and some of the other races. They've seen what happened with election integrity. They've seen what happened, how the liberal media has literally suppressed a lot of the conservatives. So people are fed up with it. Look at gas prices. Look at the cost of interest rates, the mortgage rates. Look at what's going on in this country. The borders are overcrowded. Children having transgender operations, abortions. I mean, look, people, the Republican side, they are fired up, but let me tell you, we have a long ways to go. We have to go to 2.0, getting ready for 2024.
And tell me a little bit about, you know, this night, what it would mean for a victory, a Walker victory, in terms of the balance of power and how much power Republicans will have.
Well, first of all, it shows you that Herschel Walker can take some hits. You saw what the liberal media has done to him, try to destroy him. Actually, I think they did more ads than his opponent did against him. But he's taken it all, everything, including the kitchen sink, and he's still on the field and he is running. This can change the landscape. Let me tell you who's watching this. You better believe Joe Manchin is watching what's happening here. But also the country, because this starts to set the stage for 2024. Let me tell you, if Herschel takes this race tonight, and he obviously has a damn good chance of doing it, we're going to see a whole new different landscape. You're going to see Republicans just have an overnight burst of energy. And look, let me tell you, it's going to cross this country like we've never seen before. And Herschel Walker will be able to go across this entire country and help more Republicans get elected.
And tell me a little bit about, you know, that endorsement from Governor Brian Kemp. He's extremely popular in the state, and, you know, he supported his campaign a lot in the runoff election. So tell us what that means.
Well, Governor Kemp, you got to give him the credit. He's a winner. When he talks about keep it chopping, he keeps chopping. At the same time, a lot of other endorsements have helped. But let me tell you what really helped. Those people at the grassroots level who has come out to vote, those are the ones. Those are the endorsements that matters the most. When those grassroots folks say, look, I'm going to cast my vote, whether early or the day of election, doesn't matter. They feel like their vote count. They want to make sure that they have someone that's going to represent their values and represent their views in Washington. And Herschel Herschel Walker is the horse that they're riding right now.
Well, thank you so much, Vernon, for being here with us. So there you heard it. Vernon Jones and everybody here is extremely happy to see the results coming in because the race is now anyone's game. Back to you.
Oh, we heard it. We heard those cheers erupt. Leo, Vernon, thank you so much. Great atmosphere there. Continue to keep us updated, and we'll check back in with you throughout the evening. Thank you, guys.
All right, let's welcome in now former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum to give us his analysis on where things stand so far. Great to see you, Senator Santorum.
Good to be back, John. Thank you.
All right, you know this. You've won a Senate seat before, and we're looking at these votes coming in. I think most of the early vote is in now, but what we have to look for is we got to find some places where Herschel Walker is overperforming and Raphael Warnock is underperforming. You know, it's a razor-tight race. We don't know where those places are yet, but I do want to talk to you about this. One thing that Republicans are realizing now is they've got to get better at the early voting game, absentee voting, mail-in voting. They cannot be scared of doing that in the future.
That's absolutely right. The rules of elections have changed dramatically as a result of COVID, and in many states they're not going to go back. And that means that it's much easier to get people out to vote, particularly low propensity voters. And how do you do that? You get them out over the weeks before the election. And it's a lot harder to get one person to come on one particular day during a certain amount of hours to vote. But if you've got 3 weeks to get them to vote, then it's actually a lot easier to get them to actually show up. And these are, again, not voters who come every election, but voters who come, you know, every now and then or don't vote all the time. Democrats have realized this. They have done a great job in maximizing their turnout. And Republicans, because of the 2020 election, basically have said, no, we're going to wait till Election Day. And that has been devastating. And what you saw in Georgia, both in the general and in this runoff, is that Republicans actually did a better job in getting early votes. The early vote in this election was about 1.8 million folks voted early, and almost 1.5 million voted on Election Day. That's higher than what they thought. So they did a great job. I tip my hat at the Republicans. They did a great job on Election Day, exceeding the vote totals that I think everyone thought they were going to try to hit. And so that may tip it for Herschel Walker. But again, you're running from behind instead of going out there and taking advantage of the situation you have available now.
And one of the unknown factors in this is we know a lot of people move to Georgia from blue states like California and New York. We've got to see some of these Democratic voters. I'm seeing news reports. Actually, Doug Collins just texted me one that interviewed a voter as he was leaving the polls. He voted as a Democrat on Election Day because when he went to vote early, the lines were too long. So, you know, there's some indication that the Democratic turnout on Election Day might be higher than anticipated. But again, we see how razor thin the margin is between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker now. I think it's just about 30,000 votes. But we wait for these last round of votes to come in. Stay with us. Senator Santorum, we'll check back in with you as well. Looks like Herschel Walker's now in the lead, actually. This is a new update here. So 61% of the votes are in. 51% for Herschel Walker, 49% for Raphael Warnock. And again, what we're looking for to see in counties like DeKalb County in the metro area, is Herschel Walker actually overperforming there? We do not expect him to win, but is he doing better than expected? Also, Cobb County and some of those other metro areas around Augusta and Savannah and Columbus. Can he pick up enough votes there to offset the early lead that Raphael Warnock had in those particular counties?
Again, with 61% of the votes in, Herschel Walker has just taken the lead minutes ago here, 51%.
Very exciting this evening. Coming up, much of the country has seen some surging levels of crime. How will voters in Georgia weigh in on the issue of crime? We'll talk about that after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Crime has been a major election issue across the country as certain states have seen these surging levels of crime and really violent crime, too. Georgia, of course, is no different.
A disturbing story where the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia, in fact, just charged 13 people with distributing meth and heroin, and officials say this follows a 3-year-long investigation there.
And now we have seen another violent crime in North Carolina where a man shoves an 82-year-old Home Depot worker after committing larceny. People need to feel safe in their communities, of course. So good stories like this help sway the election to Herschel Walker and get a law and order candidate in the Senate.
Let's take a closer look now and bring in our panel. We have Sergeant Betsy Branter-Smith, who is the spokesperson for the National Police Association, and also former U.S. Attorney for the St. Louis Violent Crime Unit and Prosecutor Will Scharf. Thank you both for joining us this evening.
Thanks so much for having us. Really great to be here.
I mean, obviously, these are horrific stories. We're seeing, you know, elderly people attacked at where they work. Obviously, we also know that the Democrats have gone ahead with this, you know, defund the police, even though they've backed off and said, no, we don't want to defund the police now. It's been a major issue for elections. I guess, Betsy, first to you, as National Police Association, you know, a candidate like Herschel Walker, many feel would bring back law and order, unlike some of the Democrat-run cities we have that are just lawlessness.
Well, Herschel Walker has talked a lot about support for law enforcement, and of course the National Association, the National Police Association appreciates that. Here's the thing: in Atlanta, 3 of the top crimes in Atlanta, homicide, rape, and aggravated assault, their crime rates in Atlanta are higher than in Chicago. That's insane, and I think that Georgia voters are starting to realize that. When we look at African Americans, 8 in 10 black voters said in a recent poll that they believe that violent crime is of the highest importance when we talk about voting. So I think you may see a change in voting when we're talking about Georgia. And that's the thing. We should not be politicizing crime. We should not be politicizing safety. We should not be politicizing law enforcement. Both parties need to get behind American law enforcement. And yes, the Democrats have walked back or walked back defunding the police. But we need to do more than that. We need to lift up American law enforcement and let cops do their jobs again.
Yeah, you know, that might be the factor here. You know, you would hope common sense would win out and Democrats might learn some lessons from this. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I think Sergeant Smith really called it exactly right. And as she said, murder and violent crime rates in Atlanta are now higher than they are in Chicago, a city where Sergeant Smith obviously had a long and distinguished career in the police department. They're higher than they are in Oakland, California. And I think a real driver of this has been political prosecutors, some of them funded by George Soros. It feels like the Fulton County DA's office in metropolitan Atlanta is more concerned with investigating President Trump over stuff that happened years ago than they are with prosecuting violent crime. And until that changes, until these prosecutors' offices are depoliticized and get back to the work that they're supposed to be doing, I think it's unfortunate, but I think we're going to see more of the same. And my hope would certainly be that if Herschel Walker gets elected, he'd be a strong ally on these issues.
Yeah, and I think the point is Americans want to feel safe on their streets and in their homes. This isn't a red or blue issue. This is about just securing our streets and letting people be able to go to work, you know, and not be a brutalized attack. Sergeant Smith, Will, thank you so much. Great analysis tonight. We certainly appreciate you being here with us on a very busy runoff election night.
Always great to be on Newsmax. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. And again, it's very exciting as we're watching the votes come in here. And Herschel Walker, John, in the lead with 64% of the votes being tallied here, ahead of Warnock.
Yeah, as we watch some of these metro areas have their vote tallies come in, we're going to look to see if Herschel Walker can close in. We're on Raphael Warnock's lead in these counties, and that would add to his overall lead in the state. But of course, very exciting. 64% of the votes are in right now, and we'll be keeping a close eye on this. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. All right, we are entering hour 3 of our special live coverage of the Georgia Senate runoff election, 9 p.m. here on the East Coast. That includes Georgia. And the race super close. Herschel Walker just edged out to a slim lead. Hello, and thank you for staying with us. I'm John Bachman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Della Garza. Yeah, very exciting. You know, you don't want to count out Herschel Walker. He has pulled into the lead. I guess it is football terms. They thought it was a Hail Mary, but voter turnout shows the way it's going. At least for now, he is looking like he could have the edge here against Democrat incumbent Raphael Warnock. We're watching the numbers come in. Of course, his Senate seat is so pivotal. Both sides want it, Democrats and Republicans.
Walker's lead just about 20,000 votes, but it's 50-50, and this is what we're watching, Bianca. We were just talking about this before we went to commercial break. The early vote came in, Warnock got out to a big lead, and then the votes started coming in, the day of votes. Walker then crept up, tied, got out to a lead over Warnock, which he still has now. But as the late votes come in, the day of votes, did Democrats wait to Election Day to vote? That was some of the talk because the lines were so long before. So we got to look for Herschel Walker also to outperform Raphael Warnock in certain counties. Even if he doesn't win those counties outright, he's got to do better than he did last time around during the general election.
Well, joining us live right now from the Walker campaign headquarters is our correspondent Leonardo Feldman. Obviously, the mood's been very upbeat. We heard a lot of cheers there, Leo.
That's right, Bianca. Well, right now they're doing the national anthem of the United States, and everyone here is singing along. And we also just heard the Pledge of Allegiance, and not a long time ago, we also heard a prayer as the results kept coming in. And I'm actually joined by one of Herschel Walker's biggest supporters, Melanie Collier. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, such a big moment right now, the national anthem playing right now, and he has a big chance, and he could win tonight.
Oh, absolutely. We're so excited. We've worked so hard. This man has really fought so hard through this very intense campaign. Since he first announced, he has not stopped. He has been an incredible candidate, and he is a godly man who is here to truly do God's work in this country. And if there was ever a time that we needed that, we need it right now.
And can you tell me a little bit about what made you, support him? What are some of the issues that you care about the most?
Well, first of all, when I first met Herschel, this has been several months ago, we'd all known him in the state of Georgia because he'd had such a career in football at the University of Georgia, and so we all were very familiar with Herschel Walker. But then when I met him and I saw that godly spirit that he has had and he has maintained and never wavered from, I knew this was the man I would support and that I would get behind him 100%. This was before the primaries. This was early on in this race, so I'm very proud that I supported him.
How are you feeling about tonight?
Oh, I'm excited. It's going to be a great night for us. I know it in my bones. It's just what, y'all are visiting here from wherever you have come to Georgia, and we love Herschel Walker, and we just know that God's going to bless the state of Georgia and the United States of America with this godly man, Herschel Walker.
So there you heard it, one of the many supporters here at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. They're very excited because they really think Herschel Walker is going to win tonight. Back to you, Bianca.
It's close. We're watching it. Thanks, Leo. Thanks for that live update. Very interesting and wonderful to hear supporters there. Let's take a look at what else we're watching tonight. As we know, of course, Democrats control the Senate, but a lot is at stake for this seat in Georgia. If Herschel Walker can win this evening, the Senate again will be 50-50. So, the Democrats will need Vice President Kamala Harris there to break the tie if it comes up. Senator Raphael Warnock, if he pulls through tonight, Senate will be 51-49. Harris will not be necessary to break those ties. A Democratic victory also would limit Senator Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema's voting leverage. Of course, they were most likely to oppose their colleagues' agenda. It also has a lot to do with judicial nominees. Of course, those are lifetime appointments for Supreme Court justices. We're going to be diving into that a bit later on during the broadcast this evening.
Now, there was a Libertarian candidate in November, but of course it's a one-on-one race this time around between Warnock and Walker. Let's take a look at the latest numbers. I think we have right now the majority of voters in the November midterms were voting for the balance of power. Nearly 2 million people hit the polls. The hot button issues, though, are still probably the same. The balance of power was only one factor. Inflation still at record highs in Georgia, higher in Georgia and other places as well. The right to life, the abortion issue, still key in that state. And the border crisis, even though Georgia is not technically a border state, we were talking about some of the crime issues, the fentanyl problems that are affecting every state in this country, not just the ones on the borders. So that's where we're at now.
Well, very exciting as we see the numbers come in at 72% of precincts here reporting. So it still is very, very tight. We want to bring in former Georgia congressional candidate Michael Barthelemy to McCall to, kind of dive into some of the issues that Georgia's, obviously they went to the polls today to make their voices heard. Man, I mean, this was the polls were always showing how close this was, so we knew it was down to voter turnout. But the Democrats really spent so much money going into this. Walker to, hang on here and be where he's at tonight. Just give us your reaction as we see the numbers come in, Michael.
I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at the same scenario that we had during the general election. I mean, we have razor-thin margins. You have Warnock, who has outside money coming mostly from California and D.C. area, only around, 2% or 11% coming from Georgia. He outspent Walker very much, because Walker only raised around $58 million and spent about $48 million. I mean, almost every ad that I've seen, every other one has been Raphael Warnock, okay? So what I'm seeing here is that voters have not changed their mind. You have Warnock spending tons of money on ad buys, and there's no difference, there's no change in how voters feel. Now, what we're depending on tonight as Republicans are those 2% libertarians that voted for Chase Oliver on November the 8th to come out and vote and stomp for Walker. So if we can get those 2%, I think that we have a win. We have a clear path of victory.
Yeah, Mikhail, we're kind of looking at county by county, and excuse me if I'm looking down at my computer because I'm watching these vote tallies come in, but just some good news for Herschel Walker here. Looking at Cherokee County specifically, he's now outstripped his voting percentage of what he had in November. He's now at 69% in Cherokee County. He was at 68% in November. This is 85%, 84% of the vote tallied in Cherokee County. But we've been looking for these kind of, as you were indicating, where can Herschel Walker outperform his November results without Chase Oliver, that libertarian candidate? And that's just one example. Cherokee County, just north of the metro Atlanta area, is one indication. And Herschel Walker has to have several more counties in the state where he does that if he's going to pull this off. But again, he's still in the lead, and it's a razor-thin margin. I mean, it is almost exactly 50-50 right now. Look, not just at the 50-50, but at the vote totals. We're talking about 3,000 votes or so that separate the two men at this point, Mikkel.
Yeah. And we had, Governor Kemp came out the past few days and been on the trail with Walker. Obviously, that makes a difference, too, for folks here.
Yeah, I think that really helps over here in Georgia to have the CEO of the state to come out and to support our Senate candidate, which is very important for the rest of the country. At this moment, it has to be about all in. It has to be about all hands on deck. And I commend Governor Kemp for coming out and stumping for not Raphael Warnock, but for Herschel Walker. Incredible.
The media obviously has highlighted a lot of people who've come out against Herschel Walker in his past. Warnock himself has issues, domestic issues. His wife had claimed he had run over his foot. The church is evicting people. How do you feel that the media, treated Warnock versus Herschel Walker? A lot of people say it was not fair, that stories about Warnock were just buried.
Yes, they were buried. The parts about him trying to evict tenants in his church-owned apartment buildings, his legal battles and his family issues with his ex-wife, they pretty much swept that under the rug. What I see on these commercials, they're trying to boost his image as this squeaky clean guy that can appeal to all across, Democrat and Republican aisles, and someone who would speak for the people. But I beg to differ. They have treated Herschel Walker very poorly, comparing him to someone who is not intelligent. But I'm telling them right now, do not count Herschel Walker out. Look at the performance at the last debate. I mean, he swept the floor. He swept the floor with Warnock.
Yeah, we just heard one of the supporters there saying he's a godly man, too. And I know in Georgia, when you look at Raphael Warnock, they call him, the pro-life pastor. It sort of conflicts with some people who are big evangelical Christian people in Georgia, where there are a lot of voters.
It's an oxymoron. This is the Bible Belt, and we truly believe in Bible principles here. Now, he claims to be a pro-life pastor, which is antithetical to Jesus, who is all about life. So this is the dilemma that we have here. To me, it's like it's a battle of two different types of Christians that are voting for two different types of issues. You have your evangelicals that truly believe in life and the pursuit of happiness, and then you have your woke Christians who vote like Warnock.
Well, the voters have spoken, and now they're just tallying them, I guess.
And they're still speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still speaking. We got about, what do we got? 73% of the vote in so far. It is dead even at 50-50. Look again, just about 3,000 votes separating these two gentlemen right now. Stay with us. More coverage. We'll keep checking in on the votes. We'll have more analysis as well. We'll check in on the headquarters of each candidate. Stay with us.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, welcome back. Take a look at your screen right now and just how razor thin the margin is between these two U.S. Senate candidates. Herschel Walker has a slim lead over Raphael Warnock. It's basically tied, though, 50-50. We're waiting for a few counties to report their results, but things are pretty much tracking similar to the way they went down in November. Of course, we don't have that Libertarian candidate in the race. Will those voters show up, and who will they vote for? Let's go ahead and check in now at Walker's campaign headquarters in Atlanta. We got Vernon Jones standing by, also Bruce Lavelle with us as well. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Give us a vibe check on the room there. What's going on?
Well, let me tell you, John, there's a lot of excitement here. This is like the NCAA finals or, you know, all the big-time league tournaments. Let me tell you, Herschel Walker has proven with all the hits he can still be competitive, outspent. Look how he was attacked by the liberal media, and he is still fighting. You know, you give Herschel the ball, he will run the ball. What you think, Bruce?
Well, I think, listen, this is like I'm trying to get my earpiece in. I'm sorry, so much noise back here in music. But listen, this is like the rumble in the jungle.
The thrill in Manila.
Look, that's the thrill in Manila. This is so tight. Listen, this is like, look, of all places, the Georgia Football Hall of Fame, where this is the base of all competition. And yes, Herschel Walker's bust is sitting around up here in one of these statues. So it's very fitting that a guy that fights so hard his whole life, overcoming all types of, well, you know, listen, he's here. And he's going to prevail tonight because he is a fighter, MMA, he drove the bobsled, you know, he ran the football, you know, he ran a business, you know, he has a great life story. And the great thing about life stories with people is bringing that great wealth of knowledge to a seat so they can serve.
You know, a lot of money spent in this race, so this will go down as one of the most expensive Senate races here. And the fact it is so close, Vernon, speak about that the Democrats really pulled out, you know, a lot of money, especially between the midterms and now and those 60-second ads. And yet here we are tonight, razor thin.
That's what I'm saying. With all the money they've thrown at Herschel, I mean, outspent in so many different ways. And for him to still be as competitive as he is, and I can tell you the liberal media, they did more negative campaigning ads on him than his opponent did. But the fact of it is, it goes to show you how strong he is. Yeah, money counts. It takes coal to run a train, it takes gold to run a campaign. Can you imagine if Herschel had more money, how even more competitive he'd been? Can you imagine if they had really exposed Warnock for what he is? Warnock wouldn't be where he is now. And this is, Herschel is running against a sitting United States senator, and it's the first time he's ever run, and he's where we are right now. Let me tell you, this night is far from being over. We have some other precincts coming in from some other major counties, but already I am so proud of what Herschel Walker has done, and I am so proud of the Republicans in Georgia. They want to take back this country. They want to take back this United States Senate seat.
Amen. Amen.
It's a question of now, can Herschel Walker really do better in certain counties than he did, and is Raphael Warnock doing worse in certain counties? We just got another little update, and from the time we began this interview, Herschel Walker had a lead of about 4,000. It's now closer to a little bit over 7,000 in votes. But that is such a slim number, so we're watching these votes every few minutes. They keep getting updated. Is everyone else in the room there, guys, watching as closely? Vernon, first to you.
Oh, yeah, man. They're like, I mean, this is just phenomenal. I don't know if the cameras can look back there, but this whole room is packed in the front. You got the media here, and on the back, we have another group of folks that's packed out that's really excited about this night. So, yeah, this is going to be a big
And
event.
not only is it exciting, but let me tell you, there's some nervous folks in both camps right now. Yep. Because we all know what's at stake. So goes Georgia, so goes this country. I've said it for the past couple of years. But I can tell you this, I think it's about maybe 25% of the vote still out there. There are some major counties that I'm interested in where they are right now: DeKalb, Cobb, Gwinnett, Clayton County, those surrounding counties, we have huge Democratic populations. Are they almost 100% in, or where they are? Because that is where it's going to be the strong suit for Warnock. That's where his voters are. I was looking at DeKalb County, for example, where I used to be county exec. Warnock is leading him by, 91% over his 8%. Now, I will say this, I'm going to be clear. I think Herschel Walker could have done his campaign, had they had actually run a very serious campaign in the African-American community, those numbers would be even higher with him among the black vote. Why? Because let me tell you, black people are conservative, always been conservative. If you start telling them that Warnock supports transgender operations for children, or Warnock supports babies being killed the day before they're born, or Warnock is getting into those small business people, the guy who cuts the lawn, all of a sudden now they're going to tax his Venmo, they're going to tax his Zelle, they're going to tax his Cash App. That message in the black community, because they're just like any other community, they care about their pocketbooks and they care about conservative values.
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, and it seems like, Bruce, so what was the messaging, as Vernon points to, like, was there, missed opportunities here? I mean, for, you think, lessons learned, I guess.
Well, listen, I totally agree. Listen, being a black man raised here in the South, been here since 1988, being a business owner for 28 years here in the metro Atlanta, I have a pulse of exactly what Vernon's talking about. And you saw what Brian Kemp did. Brian Kemp went out and he did some great advocacy, went out, and they rejected the fact of Stacey Abrams, her ideology, and black men, honestly, they weren't having that. And so and that would actually help in all the other candidates that were actually running in the ballots at that same time, because they reject that. Listen, we come from the nuclear family, and everyone knows that there's a void in generational wealth. And that's why the Walker camp and everybody in the conservative movement, we want to promote and push black small businesses growing back and resurrecting the generational wealth. That's part of this movement. So yes, to Vernon's point, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit on black men, and that goes for a lot of candidates across the country. Pay attention to this, especially going forward. Listen, Donald Trump spent $10 million on prison reform with Allison Johnson on one Super Bowl ad. Now that's $10 million, Bianca, on one particular ad on reaching out to black Americans that, listen, I understand the injustices on how black Americans have been incarcerated under the Biden crime bill that he wrote and authored, that Clinton signed. We addressed that in the last administration. So there's so many great, as I call it, low-hanging fruit to come out here and say, yes, we want this black vote.
Yes.
And I want to say one quick thing, too. I want to thank also those conservative white Republicans who've come out in record numbers. You look at the Crowley family, Miss Dolly Crowley out of Watkinsville, those rural areas, those outside of the donut counties, they're coming in strong tonight, and they want to see a senator that shares their conservative values. So all of you all out there, those seniors that have come out, young people, which that's what the Republican Party is going to have to do, appeal to young people and more minorities, so we can continue to grow this base, so we can take back this country and reinstate our conservative values and uphold the Constitution of the United States, including the freedom of speech.
All right, Vernon Jones and Bruce Lavelle for us live at Herschel Walker's campaign headquarters. A lot of excitement there. And, as folks may have noticed on the screen, the votes are coming in very quickly. And Herschel Walker had a lead when we started that interview with those two guys. Yeah. Now Raphael Warnock has jumped back out into a lead, but we expect that to change. It's going back and forth.
Very tight.
Seesaw.
Yeah.
Seesaw in the lead total. All right, let's also welcome in now Kentucky Congressman James Comer. He will be the soon-to-be chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Great to see you, Congressman.
Good evening.
Great to see you.
All right, we're going to take a break from Georgia real quick because we wanted to get some response from you and reaction to this news about Jim Baker, the former FBI lawyer who had to leave because he was leaking to the press. He was also involved in signing off. This is not the James Baker we're talking about. This is James Baker III. The former Secretary of State. He is not the one in question, but this is the former FBI lawyer. Same name. We didn't show Jim and Tammy Faye Baker either.
No.
It's somewhat common name, but this guy is somewhat notorious now. He had his fingerprints all over the Russian collusion narrative and hoax, and now he's working at Twitter until today. Were you surprised to hear about this?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, let's face it, this guy has a very shady past. His reputation precedes himself, and not in a good way. I think that Elon Musk has learned a lot. He's like most of America. He's just now realizing how corrupt a certain element of the FBI really are. And unfortunately, it appears Baker represents that element. Take away what he's done with Critter, look at his past with respect to the Steele dossier and all the fake information that was being spewed out by the FBI with respect to investigations of the first president. So this Twitter situation is only going to get worse for Mr. Baker. I think we sent a letter this morning to him requesting him come speak to the House Oversight Committee. We look forward to hearing his version of the story. But I think by the time he comes to the House Oversight Committee in January or whenever, I think we're going to learn a whole lot more information about what his involvement was in covering up the cover-up. I mean, this is a bad deal here.
Yeah, I think when you sent that letter, he may have even still been employed, by Twitter before Elon gave him the boot. Who else is going to be testifying? And obviously, we know that there's the Twitter issues, but obviously as well, Congressman Comer, there's also the financial records that you need to tie this all together to potentially, see where the corruption goes all the way to the top there, the big guy.
Yeah, that's a great question. Today, I met with bankers representing several of the banks that have documents that we need. We have put them on notice that they will be receiving a subpoena from us with respect to the bank records. So we've been very transparent about that. I pretty much made that clear during the press conference I had a few weeks ago. We're investigating the Biden influence peddling. We have specific requests. We're going in a specific direction. We all know the laptop was real. We all know it wasn't tampered with. We all know there are emails and messages in there where Hunter Biden constantly complained about how much money he was having to spend on his father to keep his father up. He said numerous times no one appreciated him in the family. He was the one that kept the family up all these years. So he also mentioned specific things he was paying for Joe Biden. So this is what we're focused on, seeing if, in fact, Hunter Biden was transferring a significant amount of money that he was receiving from China and Russia to his father.
And before Biden was president, these were records that Congress could get. They were not required by a subpoena.
Yeah. Congressman James Comer, great to see you. Thanks for staying up with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Congressman.
Thanks for having me.
All right, much more ahead. We are awaiting the final results from the Georgia Senate runoff. 77% of the votes are counted.
Wow.
And this keeps going back and forth. Warnock just edged out to a little bit of a lead. Just about 30,000 votes separating these two guys. Stay with us. We'll keep our eyes on this. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back with another update. Don't go anywhere. Let's take another check in with Leonardo Feldman. He's standing by live at the Herschel Walker campaign headquarters, and I believe he's talking to a Herschel Walker supporter. Hey, Leo, what do you got for us?
Michael Abrams. Michael Abrams. He's a Newsmax insider and vocal supporter of Herschel.
All right, I don't think he can hear us. It's probably very loud right there. There's been a lot of excitement as it's going back and forth between Walker and Warnock here. And look at the numbers, folks. 78% votes in, and you can see Warnock is at 50, Walker is at 50. And John, do the math here. We're looking at razor-thin numbers here. This is... I mean, for one, Warnock was in the lead during our last break, but Walker has had the lead. So again, we're watching as counties come in and where he has done better during the midterms and kind of comparison where he is tonight when it comes to Walker possibly being able to pull this out.
Yeah, for Walker and his campaign, one of the things that's concerning right now is as we drag into the night, we saw the early votes come in, the early voting come in, and then we started to see the day of votes, and those were the Republican votes, and that's when we saw Herschel Walker build out to a lead.
Go ahead, yeah.
One of the things, though, and this is what we've been hearing, is that because the lines were so long, because so many people voted early, a lot of Democrats came back on Election Day today. We did not see the long lines. So we do expect to see that more Democrats voted on Election Day. And we're just looking at some of these metro Atlanta area counties, Cobb County, Gwinnett County, DeKalb County. And we actually see, based on the results that have come in so far, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because, for example, if we look at Fulton County right now, only 54% of the votes are in.
Right.
But based on the votes that are in so far, Raphael Warnock is overperforming in Fulton County compared to how he performed in November. Herschel Walker underperforming there. Same story in Cobb County, same story in Gwinnett County, same story in DeKalb County, which is what Vernon Jones was talking about. So that's the concern right now as we start to see Raphael Warnock build this lead. It gets a little bigger as we get into the night. Are there any Republican votes in these blue counties that Herschel Walker will pick up as the night drags on? Let's go back to Leo. I believe he can hear us now, and he's standing by with a Herschel Walker supporter. Leo, what do you got for us?
Well, John, what I can tell you is that people are very energized here. You know, it's a razor-thin election runoff right now, and I'm actually here with Michael Abramson. He's a Newsmax insider, and he actually wrote a book, an article about why Herschel Walker should have reached out to libertarians. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. If we look at the general election, Senator Warnock was up by approximately 30,000 votes. And in the general election, the Libertarians had 80,000 votes. And I feel like they're the true undecided. People who didn't pick, obviously, Walker or Warnock. So it would have been great if Herschel Walker had reached out to these voters. Because I think not only would they have appreciated that, but Libertarians have very similar philosophies to the conservative candidate.
And you know, you live in Georgia. Do you think Herschel Walker is going to pull a victory tonight?
Well, all I can say is that the person who wins, their last name will start with W, is just so close. It's anybody's game.
What are you feeling right now? You know, the environment here. Can you tell us, you know, what is the campaign feeling?
Yeah, it's an exciting environment. Everybody's pretty happy. You know, the election's going back and forth, but you hear cheers when Herschel goes up, and it's just exciting. You know, it's probably going to be a long night. It usually is in Georgia, you know, until votes get counted. You know, maybe we'll see some litigation at the end of the day, but, you know, I'm very hopeful for Herschel. I think he's campaigned very, very hard, really just gone really barnstormed all over the state, and I think the people have really appreciated that.
Do you think that governor's support really helped him?
Oh, I think it's definitely helped him. I think Governor Kemp's support helped him. Obviously, Donald Trump, I got a couple of emails from him today. He did a tele-rally. Really, the whole party has been here. I know Senator Graham came, Senator Cruz. Senator Graham was here a lot, Senator Cotton. And that team effort really helps. It builds credibility, and just people like hearing those other voices coming.
So there you heard it, a Newsmax insider and someone who lives in Georgia telling us a little bit about this race, and he is hopeful that Herschel Walker is going to pull a victory. Back to you.
Leonardo Feldman right in the heart of all of it. Appreciate that update there. Keep us posted on the atmosphere, and we'll be checking back in with you, Leo. Thanks.
All right. I think we're going to skip ahead now to the border. President Joe Biden visited Arizona today, but he has no plans or ever to visit the border, perhaps.
He was asked about it.
He was. We'll talk more about that and explain his absence, or at least let him try to explain his absence when he was down in Arizona today. Why didn't he go to the border? Stay with us. All right, let's take another look, a live look for you at the numbers. And look at this.
Wow.
You know, as we've been saying, the seesaw is happening. Herschel Walker now back within about 2,000 votes of Raphael Warnock, and it's all tied back up. And so this is what we're watching as these counties come in, late vote versus early vote. Did Herschel Walker get enough voters to the polls on Election Day to beat out Raphael Warnock's early voting advantage? That's where things stand right now.
81% of the votes, and you know, we have been watching it go back and forth, and it is tight. So again, you know, this is still anyone's race here at the moment, and you know, if he did get the vote out today, this is the votes we assume they are counting right now, if they are Republicans. So we are watching this very, very closely here. We have our team out on it, and analysis ahead for you this evening.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a break from the numbers for just a second and talk about President Biden. He was in Arizona today visiting a semiconductor manufacturing plant and pushing his economic incentives. But he had no plans to visit the border. It was only about 100 miles away, Bianca, but
yeah,
that's too far for Joe Biden.
Too far. In a border state, not at the border. He still has never visited the border during his administration. And he was asked specifically, why are you not visiting the border today? You're going to Arizona. And listen to the president's response.
Why go to a border state and not visit the border? Because there's a more important thing going on. They're going to invest billions of dollars in a new enterprise.
More important things going on. That was, in case you couldn't hear him there, from the under the umbrella.
Let's bring in senior law enforcement analyst and former acting CPB commissioner Mark Morgan. Great to see you, Mark.
Great to see you both.
And it's great to talk to you. I think you were out in a tarmac when Bianca and I were trying to talk to you earlier. A little hard to hear you, but glad to connect with you now. Give us your response to Joe Biden saying that he's just got simply more important things to do, visiting a semiconductor manufacturing plant than seeing what's actually happening on the border.
Yeah, John, well, I'm talking to you physically from the border, where I was there all day today, and along being in bed with the Texas DPS Elite Aircraft Division. And look, I think that comment really shows that this president, with all due respect, is living in an alternative universe that's devoid of fact, truth, and reality. Here's what the fact is. Here's what we do know. 107,000 Americans died from drug overdoses in a 12-month period. The leading cause of death among 18 to 45-year-olds in this country is fentanyl, and we know that 95% of the fentanyl comes from the southwest border. We know in less than 24 months, 1.3 million gotaways have illegally entered the United States and they call home. Among them are countless hardcore violent criminal offenders, as well as potential national security threats. Yeah, so Mr. President, with all due respect, you're absolutely not being truthful with American people.
And, you know, they would take him along that border and give him the real deal if he was willing to go there, Mark. How does this hurt the morale? Because we know they're working so hard, and we've been hearing about suicides with some of the agents down there. I mean, it's heartbreaking to see, you know, this, you know, what appears to be a dereliction of duty, an open border scenario here in the United States of America.
Yeah, look, I talk to Border Patrol agents, Bianca, constantly, and the same theme I hear all the time. They're devastated. Their morale is the worst it's ever been. Look, these individuals, these men and women, they get up every single day. They place a badge on their chest and they go to the front lines of our borders to protect this nation's national security. And they know that the network of tools and authorities and policies that they had so that they could actually do their job to protect this country were removed on day one from this administration. They see it. They live it every single day. The numbers don't lie. And to give you, just to bring this home, I spoke to a 26-year veteran, and one morning he was getting up and he was getting his uniform ready. He was squaring away, and he looked in the mirror and he said, you know, for the first time I realized after 26 years, I now had become a part of the world's largest smuggling operation. I mean, there's nothing more you could say about that.
Well, Mark Morgan, we appreciate you bringing us the real facts of what's happening on the border in real time. Thank you so much for staying up late with us tonight for this update.
You bet. Thank you both.
All right, stay with us. We're going to head back to Georgia and get a live update from Leonardo Feldman, and could not be closer. I guess it technically could be closer, Bianca, but right now there are just a couple thousand votes separating these two guys, and it's going to get closer when we come back from a commercial break. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Of course, we're watching the numbers come in, a Senate runoff race in Georgia, and it is very tight between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. Here's the numbers, folks. 50-50 with 83% of precincts votes counted. And John, you know, you've been looking at certain counties here to see, you know, how Walker's doing compared to how he did during the midterms. Still very close here, though.
Yeah, 83% of the votes are in, and specifically I've been looking at Cobb County. This is where I grew up. This is an area that has changed a lot since I moved away in 1998, but it is where those suburban women voters are. Cobb, North Fulton County, northern DeKalb County, too. And Herschel Walker is not expected to win those counties, but he's got to perform well.
Yes. To
try and take, edge out some of Raphael Warnock's lead there.
All right, well, let's get you live now to the headquarters where, of course, anticipation, excitement has been building throughout the evening as they're watching this and their candidate go up and back. Leonardo Feldman joins us live right now from Walker's campaign headquarters. Take it away, Leo.
Well, Bianca, I'm right here with Chris Cox. He is the founder of Bikers for Trump, and he's going to let us know a little bit about how is the day going here? How's the night going for Herschel Walker?
It's looking pretty good right now. As you can tell, we're in a pretty good position. As a result of our political mathematician, Donald Trump, we're calling this a referendum on him. And from what we can tell, he's done a pretty good job right now deciding who could come down to the wire. Go back 2 years ago to the special election. The bikers with Trump were on the ground for Lefner and Perdue, and we've been on the ground this time too. This time for Herschel Walker. I can't thank my team enough. Christina, you've done an amazing job. Dale Hernan, who led it up before her, and the bikers for Trump with our 13,650-something members have been crisscrossing the state of Georgia on behalf of Herschel Walker, and we just can't say enough about it. You know, again, Donald Trump has been a mathematician. He's in the high 90s of you know, his predictions, and when we look at some of the rhetoric going across the spectrum right now, across the mainstream media, how can they second guess this man's ability to play political chess?
You believe Trump had a crucial role in the possible victory of Herschel Walker?
Certainly he did. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, Herschel Walker wouldn't be where he is today, along with a lot of other candidates who have proven that they are the man or the woman for the job. You know, a lot of things come to question. You know, we think about Kelly Shabaka in Alaska. Well, was that really fair? You know, you look at that ranked voting there. That ranked voting, you make the world hold your nose on that ranked voting, folks, because it was ranked. And Murkowski is part of the swamp, and she has no business there. We look across the country. You look at what happened with Kelly, you know, Kerry Lake. Look at that. I mean, that's a disgrace what happened over there. Now, one of the bright spots, we look at Pennsylvania, and now there are certain counties that aren't.
And unfortunately, we have to go, but thank you so much. They're cutting me right now because we're out of time, but thank you so much. So there you heard it. This is the scene right now at the Herschel Walker campaign headquarters. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Leo. And we hate to wrap up that interview, but we have to because right now we are going to go ahead and call it for Raphael Warnock. I know a lot of Herschel Walker supporters are disappointed, but it looks like Raphael Warnock has secured enough votes to go ahead and project him as the victor. And this is what we've been watching.
Those counties in, you know, outside of Atlanta.
In the last few minutes. And we really needed to see Herschel Walker overperform his results in November, and we just didn't see that. What we were seeing, though, and this is what we were reporting throughout the night, is we were seeing Raphael Warnock overperform from what he did in November in those metro Atlanta counties, Cobb County, Fulton County, DeKalb County, and Gwinnett County. So as you can see on the screen, you see the green check mark there. It looks like right now we're calling Raphael Warnock the victor of this Georgia Senate runoff. He will retain his seat. The incumbent will head back to Washington. This does now mean that Democrats would hold a 51-seat majority. This means an end to that power-sharing deal. It means Democrats will control the committees and the rules on the floors of the Senate. It means that Mitch McConnell is in a much weaker position as well, and there's a lot more emphasis on the House to kind of hold the line for Republicans.
Right, of course, and Democrats knew that a 50-50 would sort of slow things down, wasn't ideal for them. But again, with this now looking like Raphael Warnock, we are calling it that he has taken this U.S. Senate seat. It will be easier for them. Also with judicial appointments, we know that that's a big factor in what was going to be at stake here. This is the balance of power again. Raphael Warnock's win tonight secures 51 for the U.S. Senate, Republicans at 49. You know, but we do have to give it to the day of turnout, and Walker obviously had people come out today for him. He was able to galvanize his base, John, to get them out today, same-day voting. We did see him jump ahead at one point, so there was some enthusiasm. You know, people did kind of, you know, rally behind him, as we saw Governor Kemp also on the campaign trail. So, again, it just wasn't enough, unfortunately, for Republican candidate Herschel Walker to win this race.
We're going to try to take a live look at Raphael Warnock's campaign, where I'm sure they're in a good mood right now. But, you know, if we're talking about silver linings here, Bianca, we have talked about the spending. Democrats outspending Republicans 2-1 in the state of Georgia. That obviously a factor here. We'll take a short commercial break, though, but we are now projecting that Raphael Warnock will retain his seat, return to Washington as the senator from Georgia. 2 Democratic senators from Georgia. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, a live look for you at the campaign headquarters of Raphael Warnock. We have not checked in there as much tonight, but you can see the crowd pretty jubilant.
Yes.
Just a few moments ago, we did project that Raphael Warnock would win the seat that he currently holds and return to Washington as the 51st Democratic senator in the upper chamber there. And as we talked about before, Bianca, this really is a huge win for Democrats because it gives them control of the committees and the rules and the floor of the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, and you know, the numbers here do show it was close. In the end, it just Herschel didn't have enough, you know, tonight to make it happen. You're looking live here again. The crowd is filling up in Warnock headquarters, where they're expected to obviously hear from, you know, the winning candidate tonight. But as far as the balance of power, here it is. That's right. It will not be a 50-50 Senate. The Democrats have 51-49. John, as you mentioned, not just Senate committees. We're now talking about judicial nominations. We're talking about, obviously, a lot that goes in stake when you look at Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema not having that leverage here. So this was a big seat. So even if you're not in Georgia, you were looking at this race and you were looking at the money that was being poured into this race because you knew there was a lot that hung in the balance here for this. And Herschel Walker, to his credit, you know, at the end, campaigning with Governor Kemp, they got people out to the polls today. And I think a lot of people look back and say, you know, could we have done more? Does the GOP need to do more when it comes to early voting, getting people out early? Because obviously the Democrats do have that. We saw 2 million people cast votes in person before today.
Well, make sure you tune in tomorrow starting at 6:30 a.m. Wake Up America. Rob Finnerty and the team will have more analysis and reaction of what happened in Georgia and what this means for Republicans and Democrats moving ahead. As you indicated, they will have control of that Senate chamber for at least another 2 years.
Yeah, so much reaction. Then Jonna and I will be back with you tomorrow at noon East Coast time as always. But thanks again for spending your evening here with us. We certainly, you know, had a good time here watching the results come in. It was exciting for a while here. But again, Raphael Warnock has won the U.S. Senate seat for Georgia.
You see the final results, or not the final results here, but 85% of the votes are in, enough to go ahead and project it for Raphael Warnock. Again, thank you for staying with us. Stay tuned to Newsmax for the latest news and analysis you won't find anywhere else. Have a good night.